You can listen to The Professional Left wherever you get your podcasts, on Netroots Radio, or at our website, proleftpod.com, where you can also contribute to this podcast. There's a PayPal button at our website, or you can even mail us a letter and or contribution at our P.O. Box, which is 9133 Springfield, Illinois, 62791.
This is the podcast for the week of January 31st, 2025. It's not safe for work.
Recorded live from the Cornfield Resistance, where, due to circumstances beyond anyone's control, we are not on with our friend Cliff Schechter today, but we will be at some point in the future because welcome to podcasting, kids.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way it goes here at The Professional Left with Driftglass and Blue Gal.
It's true. In podcasting, shit happens. And Cliff Schechter had to move some guests around, so our appearance is postponed until further notice, as they say. And here's the deal. From now on, we're not going to let people know that we're going to be on another podcast because we know how these schedules go.
Until months later. Later.
Well, we'll announce that we were on in past tense. But if we're not going to be doing a show on a Tuesday or a Thursday, I will post a message at our Patreon page. And that is patreon.com/proleftpod. Those of you who depend on us twice a week. Mm-hmm. Like everything at our Patreon page, the message will be visible to everyone, regardless of whether you use Patreon to donate to us. You'll be able to read the post that says we're off today because we're on another podcast somewhere else. We'll link to it. Mm-hmm. We'll provide links after the fact and so forth so that you'll be up to date with how and where we are. Because I think this is going to be a trend. We seem, the OG bloggers and so forth, who are now podcasters especially, seem to be finding each other.
Yes.
And I think it's really important that we do work together. So,
yes.
I think we're probably going to have Bob Cesca come on this show and talk Star Trek with Driftglass for 3 hours.
At least 3 hours. That's just for the first episode of season 1 of The Next Generation.
Of Next Generation, okay.
Yeah.
I'm not going to edit that. That's just going to go out live. I swear to God. Anyway, so if you wind up wondering, wait, I thought there was going to be a podcast today and there's not, or I don't see one from yesterday and it's a Tuesday or Thursday, check our Patreon page because we'll have an explanation up there.
Or you are accidentally listening to Keith Olbermann, in which case that's just the way it is with Keith these days.
Yeah, he just doesn't, I need to do a bulletin. Okay. Yeah, whatever.
Sometimes there is, sometimes there not. Now, on to the events of the week. As you know, there was a terrible midair collision yesterday over Washington, D.C. And at the time of this recording, as we are speaking, no one knows exactly what happened except that it was a really terrible tragedy. That's all anyone knows for sure. Mm-hmm. We also know for sure that of the many, many executive orders that Donald Trump vomited out on day 2, there was one entitled Keeping Americans Safe in Aviation. And that executive order included the following lie, quote, "During the prior administration, however, the FAA betrayed its mission by elevating dangerous discrimination over excellence," unquote. And then in the accompanying White House fact sheet, it said Trump had signed a presidential memorandum that, quote, "ends DEI madness and restores excellence and safety," unquote, in the FAA. This included a hiring freeze on air traffic controllers who already stretched way too thin as it was, and appointing a Muppet named Sean Duffy as the U.S. Transportation Secretary.
Speaking of the madness of DEI hires, Duffy's job before being put in charge of the safety and maintenance of the United States' civilian transportation infrastructure and personnel, that's going to make me cry, was the co-host of a Fox Business show called The Bottom Line.
Yeah.
He came to fame through being on a reality show called The Real World.
Mm-hmm.
And so Duffy, like many other Trump appointees, is a 100% white guy DEI hire who is completely unqualified for the job he's being hired to do. It is also a fact that right out of the gate, Trump fired the head of the TSA and the Coast Guard and gutted the Aviation Security Advisory Committee in a memo saying that the department is eliminating the membership of all advisory committees as part of a commitment to eliminating the misuse of resources and ensuring that DHS activities prioritize our national security. There's some word salad for you.
Mm-hmm.
Then days later, the United States had its first fatal commercial plane crash in 16 years. 68 civilians and 3 members of the U.S. military who were on the helicopter were killed. The flight was carrying members of the U.S. figure skating team, their coaches and family members. As Driftglass said, this is a tragedy.
It's a tragedy. And as of now, no one knows what happened.
Right.
No one. So there's nothing to say about the causes, right? Wrong. Because this is Trump's first response, which was via Twitter, of course, because he's a senile toddler who couldn't be spray painted and stuffed into a girdle in a suit and whacked up with enough Adderall to make it appear that his brain was active and put in front of a camera. So he went to shitter, and this is what he said in part, quote, "This is a bad situation, and it looks like it should have been prevented. Not good." All caps, 3 exclamation points. Not good. Because, his brain is fucking mush. And this was the response from Trump's Secretary of Transportation DEI hire, Sean Duffy.
So I don't know if you all could hear the question. It's a question about the flight path of the helicopter. I don't want to go into too much detail about the information we have from the FAA, but obviously it is not standard to have aircraft collide. I want to be clear on that.
So planes aren't supposed to crash?
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
Everyone knows exactly what would have happened if this happened under Biden. Trump would be blaming Democrats and DEI. You know it, I know it, everybody knows it. And I've been impressed with the number of military people who have come on to social media and said, every time I did anything, if it happened on my watch, it's my fault.
Right.
It doesn't matter. And no commanding officer wants to hear how the situation was left and when I came in. They don't care. You're there. That's your responsibility. If you're on duty, you're there. That's it. And a number of people said that. We don't even need to play the what would the fascists have done if this had happened under Biden game. Because today, while Democrats were behaving like civil adults interested in facts and not playing politics, the White House wheeled Trump's doped up fat ass to a lectern where he claimed the following.
The ACLU's got to take a lot of blame for this.
Oh, yeah.
And I know I'll hear from them for this, but throwing God successfully with the help of the federal court system, throwing God out of the public square, out of the schools. The abortionists have got to bear some burden for this because God will not be mocked. And when we destroy 40 million little innocent babies, we make God mad. I really believe that the pagans and the abortionists and the feminists and the gays and the lesbians who are actively trying to make that an alternative lifestyle, the ACLU, People for the American Way, all of them who tried to secularize America, I point the finger in their face and say, you helped this happen.
Oh, oopsie, I'm so sorry. I am so sorry. That was not Donald Trump the day after yesterday's midair collision. That was Jerry Falwell, 24 years ago, the day after 9/11. Automatically blaming everyone the conservative Christian right blames for every fucking thing. Now, back in the here and now, Donald Trump went on TV to automatically blame, let me check my notes. Oh, yeah. Automatically blame every fucking person the MAGA right blames for everything. Biden and the Democrats and Obama and, of course, our sinister DEI agenda, which forced the FAA to fill its ranks with low intellect, untalented, and disabled air traffic controllers. You see, kids, they always do this. Even back in the good old days, in the before time, when it's all supposed to pretend that everyone got along, they always fucking do this. They've been doing this since Gingrich, since before Gingrich. Find the enemy, blame everything on them, except none of this is true. None of it's true. This is from NBC News, May 16th, 2024, which was, if you'll check your calendars, last year. Quote, President Joe Biden, and how I miss saying President Joe Biden, on Thursday signed sweeping aviation legislation that will boost U.S. air traffic controller staffing, increase funding to avert runway close call incidents, and speed up refunds for canceled flights. The bill aims to address a shortage of 3,000 air traffic controllers by directing the FAA to implement improved staffing standards and to hire more inspectors, engineers, technical specialists, unquote.
So, what is the best action now? What should the Democrats be saying and doing? Well, here are competing headlines from Newsweek, which, is a rag.
It's a rag. Mm-hmm.
But just to get your imagination rolling, this is from Newsweek today at 12:14 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
Quote, Democratic CNN commentator and lawyer Bakari Sellers apologized on Thursday for seemingly blaming President Donald Trump for American Airlines plane crash Wednesday night. After receiving backlash for his post, Sellers deleted it. In a follow-up post from Wednesday, he wrote, he removed the post because timing matters. Politics at this point does not. I effed up. I own that. I am very prayerful, but I'm also very frustrated, upset, and disturbed with where we are as a country, he said. I recognize and I will do better. The only thing that matters is rescuing the survivors and ensuring that this never happens again, unquote.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is from Newsweek the same day, about 30 minutes earlier at 11:43 a.m. Quote, Donald Trump blames Obama-Biden DEI for D.C. plane crash, unquote. From New York Post today, quote, Trump rips Biden Democrats for D.C. plane crash, blames unqualified FAA employees and putting policy first, unquote. Friend of the pod Kevin Holtzinger told us that seeing clips of Trump talking about the plane crash, Kevin said, never knew that more white dudes was the solution to all of society's problems. Just Googled blames DEI, and it's like Blue Gal talking about Gingrich and Googling blames Democrats.
Mm-hmm.
And this was the thing with Newt Gingrich being on the Sunday shows. He would just open the newspaper. What's the headline? Oh, this happened. Newt Gingrich blames Democrats for Paris stabbings, blames them for anything that's bad and evil and violent.
Mm-hmm.
He would be invited on the Sunday shows because he was the other side. He's the conservative side. And this was his, mode of training Republicans. Go in front of a microphone and blame Democrats for everything bad that's happening.
Yeah, this is going back to his 1990s strategy that got
94.
Got him and, with the help of Rush Limbaugh, won the House of Representatives for the first time in 40 years, which was every time you're in front of a microphone, slam Democrats, blame Democrats. Everything bad in the universe that's ever happened since the Big Bang is the fault of Democrats. Or as you heard Jerry Falwell say, pagans, the gay agenda, the ACLU. They have a whole laundry list of people, and they automatically blame them.
And it worked.
And it worked.
It programmed a whole nation of many of them women to believe, well, I would never vote for a Democrat. They killed babies. They do this. They do that. Mm-hmm. They brought on World War II. They lost the war in Iraq, and on and on and on.
Yeah, and undoing that damage is the work of the next generation of Americans. Because
I thought you were going to say it's the work of the next generation having to bury the old generation.
Well, yeah, that's pretty much it. Because, Republicans, and I'm talking about
Republicans, yes.
I'm talking about most of your favorite never-Trumpers spent most of their adult life dumping poison like this into the body politic
following the Gingrich playbook, yes.
On purpose, for the purpose of winning elections, training the base that it's always Democrats to blame. So when Donald Trump comes out not 12 hours after this tragic crash and just lights into Democrats and says right off the top of the dome, as they say, it's DEI and Obama and Biden. Boom, and has all of his lackeys like nodding their little bobbleheads. Yep, that's it. That's the reason. That's what happened. You know that this is not something that they learned yesterday. This is the result of 40 years of training and conditioning and learning that, you see, because DEI is the new magic conjure word, right? For people who can't quite say the N word yet in public, but really, really, really want to. Can't quite call Mexicans dirty words, can't quite call women dirty words, but they really want to. So they bundle it up in DEI. And because CRT is so 2022, it's so last year, year before. It's all used up. It's chewed up bubblegum. But there'll always be a new one. There'll always be a new catchphrase, a new thing, a new socialism, a new communism to lump everyone you don't like together under one rubric and blame them for everything. So the question then is, should Democrats do the same thing? Because 90% of the time we're actually right. Should right off the bat, every time anything bad happens, say, well, it's because Donald Trump is a lying asshole and Republicans are traitors. Every time. Egg prices go up a penny. Well, it's because Republicans are traitors and Donald Trump's a lying crook scumbag. Every time, every channel. That's a legitimate question. That's a legitimate question to have. Now, it might not work. It might work. And that's what we're going to talk about for a little while.
Yeah. I think Pete Buttigieg clearly understands the assignment.
Yeah.
And I reposted him today and said, he is one of several shadow presidents that we have.
He's running.
He may be running for the Senate from Michigan. They're talking about that now. But this is what Pete Buttigieg said. And remember, he's the former transportation secretary.
Yeah.
Quote, despicable. As families grieve, Trump should be leading, not lying. We put safety first, drove down close calls, grew air traffic control, and had 0 commercial airline crash fatalities out of millions of flights on our watch. President Trump now oversees the military and the FAA. One of his first acts was to fire and suspend some of the key personnel who helped keep our skies safe. Time for the president to show actual leadership and explain what he will do to prevent this from happening again, unquote. And breaking news, a reporter in the Oval Office late this afternoon asked Donald Trump if he was going to go to the site of the crash to express sympathy and action to the victims and their families. And he said, what, over the water?
Can't he just walk across the water? I mean,
I thought he could.
Yeah. Well, let's just say that with the exception of that time for the president to show leadership part, which we all know is ridiculous and will never happen because he's Donald Trump and he's a lying, treasonous scumbag. We stand with Mayor Pete. We 100% stand with him. He waited for Trump to react like the cornered, rabid shitbag that he is, and then he counterpunched him very hard and very effectively. So setting all that aside for a minute, there are 3 things to talk about when it comes to talking about politics and tragedy and democratic responses and what's the right thing to do. First, here's breaking news for something our never Trump allies have never gotten their heads around, have never been able to. Democrats are not Republicans. We really aren't Republicans. They just have never understood that the tactics they use to get bigots and imbeciles to vote for monsters and demagogues doesn't work with us. And they keep trying to make it work, and it just doesn't. Republicans, think of it like this. Republicans are like cockroaches, right? They live in the darkness. They thrive in the darkness. And they scatter when the light shows up. They feed on lies, bigotry, grievances, and they nourish themselves on liberal tears. If tearing down the government will make liberals sad, it'll destroy the lives of millions of people and cost millions of lives. If it'll make liberals mad, then it's a good thing. Because that's how they nourish themselves, by hating us and making us sad. But Democrats are like sunflowers. We're politically heliotropic. We follow the light, and we thrive in the light, and we actually believe in good policies and in good government. And that's the difference between the two groups. We respond very differently, almost in opposition to each other, to the same stimulus.
Yep. And the second thing is persuasion. Coming right off the blocks blaming Trump is not going to persuade anyone to change their minds. It won't change the minds of Republican cultists, since nothing will change their minds, sorry to say. It won't change the minds of mealy-mouthed centrists who always find a way to blame both sides. And Democrats are already on board, so no change there. So since no minds will be changed,
Yeah.
This is always Driftglass. I'm shrugging my shoulders. Shrug your shoulders. Yeah.
Look,
Nothing's going
honey,
to happen.
The Nazis are behaving like Nazis. Look at that. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Look at that. I'm so surprised.
Yeah, he does that a lot around here.
Yeah, I do. My shoulders are like giant bowling balls at this point. I get shoulder exercises all day long.
Shrugging. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So does going hard after Trump over everything do any good? Yeah. That's what I'm asking you.
And I think the answer is actually yes, but for reasons that don't involve persuasion. Because part of a winning strategy in a long war is rallying the troops you already have when things are not going your way. When things are going badly, you have to keep the troops rallied. So, in the year 1191. Yes, I know. It's a story, so bear with me. In the year 1191, King Richard, who you might know as Richard the Lionhearted, was deep into the Third Crusade. I believe this is the third or maybe for the Fourth Crusade. And he's leading his army through enemy-held territory on a march from the city of Accra to the city of Haifa. If I have my geography correctly, that's about 25 miles, and they're marching very slowly. They have to march very slowly to get there, hugging the sea. And so they're being harassed from three sides every day. Arrows shot at them, all kinds of nonsense being thrown their way every single day. The army was split into three divisions. Richard was leading the vanguard in front. The English and the Norman Crusaders are in the center. And Hugh of Burgundy and the French are in the rear. So it's a big rectangle, and the king is in the front. Very tough fighting almost every day. And this is, remind yourself, this is about 700 years, 7 centuries before the invention of the radio, 750 years before the invention of the walkie-talkie. And there's no GPS coordinating anything. So all you have is line of sight and runners going back and forth. But what they did have was King Richard's banner wagon. It's an important concept to understand about the battle banner, especially in this particular battle. In this battle, it was a wooden wagon with iron armor and this monstrous ironclad flagpole. And on the very top of it was Richard's enormous dragon banner. It was protected on all sides by the king's own elite guard, and it was always visible to everyone. You could see it, I guess, for miles around, including the enemy. The people who were attacking you could see it as well. So as long as it was flying, as long as the banner was flying, you knew the king was still alive and engaged and fighting, which helped the troops keep their fear in check and stay focused on advancing towards their goal. Mm-hmm. Because we're in the middle of a fight. And in the middle of a fight, good leaders don't wait for consensus. They lead. They put up a banner so people will follow them and know that they are not lost, that they have allies, and that the king and the leader is still in the fight. Now, sometimes that might be wrong. It happens all the time. And failure can have really bad consequences. But they know that indecision is definitely always the wrong action. Mm-hmm. Successful leaders were prepared for this fight. Like, you and me, Blue Gal, writing about Republican politics for 20 fucking years, warning people for 20 years that this is coming. You got to understand the Republican Party is this way, preparing for this fight, and have listened to advice of people they trusted. We listen to people we trust all the time. But once the fight is on, the time for taking up committee meetings is over. It's time for action. And right now, believe it or not, there really are Democratic senators kicking ass in the confirmation hearings.
They're flying the banner. Regardless of whether they're able to block any of these DEI hires from Trump, they're flying the banner. And I think that's something we've been calling for this week and screaming at our governors and senators about. Mm-hmm. So Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren absolutely spit roasted JFK Jr., as did Colorado Senator Michael Bennet, as did Bernie Sanders, as did Senator Maggie Hassan, who highlighted his hypocrisy on the subject of bodily autonomy. He's rabidly in favor of it when it comes to vaccines against dangerous communicable diseases, but weaseled out of it when it came to abortion rights. Over at the Kash Patel fiasco, even our own senator, who is generally bland and glacially slow, Dick Durbin, he found the motivation to take Kash Patel apart. Now here's a little snip.
Are you familiar with Stu Peters? Does that name ring a bell?
I'm sorry, what?
Are you familiar with Mr. Stu Peters?
Not off the top of my head.
He made 8 separate appearances on his podcast. He promoted outrageous conspiracy theories and worked with a prominent neo-Nazi. There are more. Ted Nugent, it goes on, list goes on. I'm just asking, when it comes to your association with individuals, why are so many of them in this category?
However, realistically, no matter how powerful their rhetoric may be, liar! 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 Or how many facts they have on their side, is unrealistic to expect Democrats to persuade cowardly Republicans to behave bravely, or traitorous Republicans to act patriotically, and everyone knows it, regardless of why they are, whether it's the death threats or the blackmail or win red or whatever it is. Everyone knows they're stuck with following Trump.
Right, because they're not leaders anymore. They're not leaders.
No.
They're followers, and they're following Trump's banner. There's no leader in the Republican Party except Donald Trump.
Right.
And so every single person knows damn well that you don't go against him, because if you do, he'll crush you. And in the case of RFK Jr., the threats against Republicans are very open and, on the table. This is from NPR. Quote, RFK Jr.'s former running mate, billionaire Nicole Shanahan, publicly this week said she will personally fund primary challenges to any of the key senators who oppose him or threaten to take down his nomination. Unquote. She is going to
end Citizens United.
She's going to buy him that seat.
Right.
And anybody who wants to vote against him is on her list. And she's a billionaire. Billionaires can get away with shit like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
right now they can. Absolutely.
Well, until, we overthrow the government and eat the rich. Yeah. Except for you, Jamie Pritzker. We like you.
Or reverse, don't forget the progressive movement was a reaction to the robber barons and the oligarchs of the late 19th century.
There was a progressive movement? You're lying to me, Blue Gal.
No.
Don't lie to your
and
husband.
And a lot of it started with giving women the vote.
Yeah,
well, in 1920,
Well, now, as
or I should say, culminated in giving women the vote. I should say that. Yes.
And after that, everything worked out great.
Well, it's a very interesting time in history. And it's important, people talk about, the failure of prohibition and so forth. Prohibition was a stalking horse against domestic violence.
It absolutely was. Couldn't agree more.
That's why women wanted to close down the bars, was men were coming home drunk and beating their wives, and they couldn't say that.
Right.
So they went over demon liquor.
And they won.
And they won.
And then came the unintended consequences. Yeah. And it worked, well, it worked out for a minute, but then not so much, because people like that demon rum. And they like their beer. I mean, it went too far. Anyway, we're not going to relitigate the progressive era or the prohibition era.
But I'm saying that these cycles happen.
They do.
And there's whatever happens under Trump, there is going to be a reaction to that.
Yes, there will. And at no point in history that I know of has the reaction to something like, a tyrant been laying down and letting it happen. Now, once they achieve absolute autocratic power and kill everybody who opposes them within the country, that happens, then, you have a big problem, because there are no more opposition leaders left. But you cannot kill the truth, and you cannot kill reality. We said that last episode. Reality is our ally. However, for all of that, it's kind of a mistake to go looking for your banner wagon, our banner wagon in Congress. A bunch of people are doing good work in Congress right now. But for the most part, Democratic lawmakers just aren't built that way. They're not built for it. They're legislators.
Yeah.
They want to make laws, and they make laws every day. They have to go out and make deals and compromises and shake hands with people and find the middle ground. They love the word bipartisan like a glutton loves his lunch. And in the face of fascism, which is what we're facing, this obsession with bipartisanship is just entirely inappropriate. It is the wrong reaction to the times we live in. And this, frankly, was the tragic flaw of the Obama administration and the tragic flaw of the Biden administration. This delusion that somehow the spirit of Everett Dirksen secretly lurks in the heart of every Republican lawmaker. And if you just compromise with them one more time, if you just give them enough ground, if you just keep smiling and offering olive branches, even as they fuck you over again and again and again, eventually their better angels will emerge and they will see the light and we will have a bipartisan compromise and blah, blah, blah. No, nope, not with this crop of Republicans. This is never, ever going to happen. which is why the place to look for Democratic leadership these days is not in the halls of Congress. It's in the blue state capitals, where it's our governors who are pushing senators to be more aggressive.
Yep. Because they are administrators.
They're executives.
Unlike legislators, they're in the executive branch.
Yeah, and they're used to leading. They have to lead.
Well, and who does a food stamp recipient call if they can't get through to the food stamp office?
Exactly.
They call their governor's office. Yeah. All right. This is from the New York fucking Times. Quote, intense call. Governors push Schumer to fight hard against Trump. A group of 6 Democratic governors pressed Senator Chuck Schumer of New York during a tense call on Wednesday night to be more aggressive in fighting back against President Trump's nominees and agenda, all but begging the minority leader to persuade Senate Democrats to block whatever they could. The call, described in detailed notes as well as interviews with 2 participants and 5 other people briefed on the conversation, revealed the growing tensions among Democrats about how forcefully they should oppose Mr. Trump. Governor J.B. Pritzker of Illinois, yay, and Governor Maura Healey of Massachusetts each told Mr. Schumer that Senate Democrats should not vote for Mr. Trump's nominees after the administration issued a memo freezing trillions of dollars in federal grants and loans, which was pulled back on Wednesday. Ms. Healey urged Mr. Schumer to slow down Senate votes and create more public opposition than Democrats in the chamber have generated so far. She also lamented that Democratic governors were bearing the brunt of calls from constituents affected by Mr. Trump's policies while also leading the legal effort to block them. That is a lot for them to take on.
Right. They're doing the work.
Yeah. Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota, who was chosen as the Democratic nominee for vice president last year, largely on the basis of his ability to articulate the party's message on cable news, said Democrats needed to be more visible on television, presenting an alternate vision of governing. That's that shadow president I was talking about.
Yep.
Not just complaining about what Mr. Trump is doing. Mr. Walz argued that Democrats must occupy just as much media space as Mr. Trump and Republicans have been doing. That's kind of hard when you don't have your own TV networks, plural.
Right. And the legacy media is rolling over right and left.
Right.
Now, as we talked about last episode, and as we're going to talk about a lot in the future, there is a precedent for this. The precedent is 2003, 2004, 2005, 2006, when another incompetent, gravely corrupt, and criminally incompetent Republican president lied us into the wrong war, fucked up a bunch of things, lost an American city to a hurricane, presided over the collapse of the global economy, all while the legacy media and the conservative media kept trying to pretend it wasn't happening or wasn't that bad or whatever. The people who mounted the most vocal opposition to that and who were the most sustained opponents and proved to be right in the end, who were, in fact, gobbling up media space because we were making more noise, were bloggers. We're us. We're us folks.
Yeah.
So there is precedent for doing this. It just requires a lot more coordination and a little bit more funding and, a recognition that we exist. That'd be nice. The Times article continues. Governor Andy Beshear of Kentucky said Democratic governors whose states had Republican attorneys general needed a separate legal and communication strategy for combating Mr. Trump's policies. He argued that Mr. Trump had appeared more focused on acquiring Greenland than on the price of eggs, and said Democrats need to focus not on what they see as the desecration of American democracy, as much as how Trump is making life harder for people. I would argue you can do 2 things at once, Mr. Beshear, but point taken. Mr. Beshear also said that the hardest part of dealing with the new administration was that the American people, listen very carefully to this, would have to feel the pain of Mr. Trump's actions so that they could learn not to make the same mistakes of electing someone like him again. Kids got to learn. It builds character.
No, but I think this is the strategy that Democrats have been taking: is let Trump fail, and then we'll win the midterms and get rid of him. And you can't not have a banner up, as you said.
Yeah. Well, and it is because we are different than Republicans are happy to let people suffer. They delight in making certain people suffer. It's what binds them together. We don't want people to suffer unnecessarily. We don't want people to be impoverished unnecessarily. So we tend to intercede when we see a bully beating up someone weaker than them.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. A lot of the people who are going to get the shit knocked out of them by the Trump policies are Trump voters.
And there's been a lot of fuck around and find out, hubris among Democrats to say, well, now you get to suffer. But it means everyone suffers.
It does. But it also means what we have to do, sadly, is fight against our natural instinct to step into the breach and try to stop it from happening. Because you have to learn. You have to learn not to touch the hot stove. And if we keep throwing...
But you're not saying that Democrats' attorneys general shouldn't sue Trump to stop some of this crap from happening?
Oh, of course they should. But it's just a fact that a bunch of these executive orders and a bunch of these policies that will get through Congress, because it's Republican-controlled, are going to very badly hurt Trump voters. And the fact of the matter is there's very little Democrats can do to mitigate that legislatively since we're in the minority.
And so I say, Driftglass, that Congress has been unable to pass a farm bill since 2018.
Hey, we live in farm country, don't we, Blue Gal?
Every red state is farm country of one kind or another. And what Republicans do not want to fund in the farm bill is school lunches.
Exactly. Oh, and I think food stamps, 10
and
food
stamps. Yep.
Yeah, because that's still
all of that. And so program. What they keep kicking the can down the road and compromising with will extend the 2018 bill another year. And there was a quote by a farmer in a red state saying, can you buy things with $2018 in 2025? Because what you're doing is renewing the bill at 2018 rates. And so now it's going to be at least November of this year, before they take up a farm bill again. And they just keep extending it another year because Republicans don't want to feed people.
Yeah, I apologize. While we were talking, my phone interpreted my response to how Snap works as a question. How does Snap work? And started talking to me about the history of benefits
of the food stamp program.
Yeah. So this podcast brought to you by my big mouth and AI. So congratulations.
Yeah. Well, and there was a woman I saw on YouTube the other day. It was another fuck around and found out podcast of look at this Trump voter suffering. And she was a mother of young children on food stamps crying and saying, please tell me you're fucking lying. Please tell me you're fucking lying. I'm not eating this week so my kids can eat. I'm waiting for February 1st to get my food stamps to buy food again. It's all I have. And she was sobbing into her phone camera.
Yep.
And it was very hard to watch.
Of course it was.
But she voted Trump, why? Because her pastor told her to, or because her daddy always said, or I like white men to be president, or whatever the reason was. And I don't know if there's anyone in her life to say the reason this is happening is Republicans. And it's time for you to stop voting for them because they don't care about your children eating. And I can prove that because the farm bill is from 2018.
Well, there may not be anyone in her life who can tell her that this is all because Republican policies. If she has her phone and she's on her phone complaining and sad, then she has access to the internet. And if she has access to the internet, she could find out relatively easily why this is happening. If she chooses not to do that, I can't help her because she chooses to remain ignorant of the consequences of her actions. And I don't know what to do about that other than take her kids away and give them to someone who will raise them correctly.
Yeah, well, I will tell you as a former single mom of 3 kids on food stamps, she may not have the mental and physical bandwidth to be researching economic policy, but she may have the bandwidth to scream a cry of help into her phone and post it.
I agree.
To get somebody to tell her this isn't happening.
Right.
And that's what she was begging on the phone. Please tell me this isn't happening. Please give me information to tell me I am going to be able to feed my kids next week.
And I'm not trying to be cruel.
Yeah, I know.
She also had the mental bandwidth to go out and vote.
Yes, she did.
Made a choice. She made a catastrophically stupid choice.
Mm-hmm.
And if we step in and say, don't worry, no matter how dumb you are, no matter how badly you've decided things, no matter how badly you fucked up your life by voting for this lunatic, we will fix it for you.
Yeah.
So it won't hurt one little bit. We'll put a Band-Aid on it, and you won't have to worry. And 5 fucking minutes later, she'll forget that we were the ones who saved her.
Absolutely.
And she'll go right back to voting for monsters. So
Absolutely.
there is
and this is the Social Security recipients' problem, too.
Exactly.
It's always depending on Democrats to preserve their programs, but voting Republican because that makes me look good to my neighbors or God or white Jesus with blue eyes, the Scandinavian Jesus, whatever it is. But saying, well, no one's going to cut Social Security and Medicare. And in the back of their minds, they know Democrats are going to protect that.
Exactly. And when that doesn't happen, they'll want to know why Democrats failed.
Why did Democrats fail to protect my stuff? Yeah.
And there is a certain kind of logic to, at some point, after the 7th time you've tried to put the gun in your mouth, metaphorically, and we've dived in to save you from your own stupid mistakes, we go, you know what? Go ahead. Do what you want to do. Go do what you want to do.
I don't know whether it's worth. I'm sorry, we're getting a little off track here, but I do want to ask you: is it worth it to push back on people who say, "Look, I paid into Social Security my whole life"? To push back and say the only reason you paid into Social Security your whole life and expect it to be there when you retire is because of Lyndon Baines Johnson, a Democrat, made that happen, and FDR,
and Franklin,
a Democrat, made that happen, and Republicans have been trying to push that back and delay, negotiating to delay your retirement age and want to delay it again.
Yeah.
I don't want to say where's the gratitude, because that's not what I mean. That's being petty. But where is the consciousness of who's buttering your bread? And I worked hard all my life and paid into Social Security. Who made that program?
Right. Who set the
bank up? And yet you get George W. Bush saying it's not a government program.
Right.
Against, when you're running against Al Gore. Well, that's not a government program. It just happens magically.
Well, at the risk of mentioning something we mentioned, 20 minutes ago, Republicans are different than us. They just don't think the same way we do. It just doesn't occur to them. There are things that happen to them, the invisible power of the government, all the invisible benefits there are in having a smooth, well-run government. And the things they don't like are the things that Newt Gingrich talks about and Rush Limbaugh talked about and Jerry Falwell talked about. And they hate government. Government's bad. So let's tear it all down. Right. And when you tear it all down and then, the bulldozer.
And when you freeze all of it.
Yeah.
When Donald Trump freezes all of it and all of a sudden it's your food stamps that are going to feed your kids on Saturday.
I hate to invoke the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, but you woke up in the morning and there are bulldozers outside your house. Like, what happened?
Right.
Oh, no, we're putting a highway through here. When did that happen? Oh, we've already decided this. It was on file. Why didn't you go check it out? Now, that is, of course, an example of brutal bureaucracy abusing a decent human being. But the point of fact is there are bulldozers coming for things that you love and value. And the people who are driving them gleefully are the people you put into office. And if you are too ignorant to understand the difference between good government and a demagogue, things that are good for you and bad for you, then there is a word for that. And that word is child. You're a child. You're not capable of making grown-up decisions. So next time it comes election time, remember, you're a child. You're bad at making decisions. Stay home. Just sit at home and watch television or do whatever you do. But stay the fuck away from the ballot box because you don't know how to use it. And when you use it, you break things. And just let Democrats take care of it because you're not capable of doing that. We're going to spend the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, half century, cleaning up the messes you made. And we're not asking for gratitude, but we would appreciate it if you didn't sabotage it every time we pick up a broom and try to clean up your fucking mess.
Yep.
And at some point, and I'm repeating myself again, if they just can't stop themselves, then as you know from any relationship, any attachment, any experience with addicts, you got to let them hit bottom.
Yeah.
You can't persuade them, convince them, coax them that this is bad for you, because they're talking, the drug is talking. And right now, the drug of hating us, hating liberals, wanting to drink liberal tears is stronger than any other force in their lives. And you have to step out of the way. Said, fine, jump off the cliff. You're going to drag me with you. You're going to drag a lot of people I love with you. But there's no stopping you. You're the majority. You want to go off the cliff? Fine. But when you hit bottom, don't expect us to help you.
Or have any sympathy. Right.
Or we would like you to understand. Maybe you'll have, on the way down, you'll have a road to Damascus moment.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll suddenly realize, I've been a chump my whole life, I've been a fool, I've been a cult member, and I shouldn't have done the things I did. You know, that 2 minutes before you die, when your whole life flashes in front of you, to realize, oh, I've been a fuck up and I chump my whole life. Hopefully that revelation comes to you before you actually destroy yourself beyond repair. But I can't do that for you. I can only suggest that you pay attention, that if you're going to vote for people who have control over your life, you learn something about what they do and what they believe. That's all. You know, put in the minimum amount of study. You don't have to go to college. You don't have to study economics. You don't have to study public policy. But the minimum amount of information about who you are voting for and what their plans are is the minimum we can expect from a civically minded adult. If you can't do that, then you're not a civically minded adult.
They're watching the news all the time, Driftglass.
I know. I'm sorry. Let me get
Sean
back to
Hannity. They call Sean Hannity the news.
Let me get back to Governor Kathy Hochul.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, I got off. You put a soapbox under me, and I stepped right up on top of it. Anyway, back to the New York fucking Times. Governor Kathy Hochul of New York said that Democrats were not inclined to inflict pain on their constituents. Yeah, this is what we just said. But the people needed to understand the consequences of electing Mr. Trump. Bingo. I could have not talked for 5 minutes and just said that, because that's what it really means. That's what we're really talking about. You've got to understand the consequences of your actions. Governor Laura Kelly of Kansas, who is the chairwoman of the Democratic Governors Association and helped organize the call along with Mr. Pritzker, yay, Mr. Pritzker, said their party needed to do a better job with its digital outreach in response to Mr. Trump. She called for Democrats' online strategy to become down and dirty. Hey, right there with you, babe, right there with you. And we're going to end with this. Mr. Schumer responded that Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey was in charge of Senate Democrat social media and praised the job he was doing, unquote. To which I say, no, do not put the nicest man who will shovel out your driveway in charge of the Democrat social media. Now, everyone knows that it'd be nice if Republicans were play nice, and we're all
Kumbaya,
nice.
My
and
Lord,
like,
Kumbaya.
Good God. Now, I agree with the predicate that there needs to be coordination, that people need to get a lot more aggressive, that Democratic messaging needs to be a whole lot more than a press release and a presser every so often. It needs to be all the time, every day. And that's what bloggers are good at. But putting the nice guy in charge of taking on the monsters is a recipe for failure. And I don't think Chuck Schumer is built to understand that. I don't think Chuck Schumer can understand that, which is why you don't go looking for your banner in Congress, because they're just not made that way. If you're lucky.
I also think that we are getting to the point where, as I said earlier, Citizens United is becoming a distant memory, and this constant need to raise millions of dollars is now just the water in which they swim, with no understanding that there's a cause for this and that could be reversed. Well, and that if they should, and that Republican base voters, boots on the ground Republicans, do not like Citizens United any more than we do.
Then why did the Democrats?
They don't want billionaires to run. They don't like Elon Musk, being hanging around Mar-a-Lago.
Let me ask you this. Do they not like Citizens United, or do they not like all the money in politics?
They don't want billionaires. They want voters to decide how things run, not billionaires.
Are they aware? Do you think the average Republican voter has ever heard of Citizens United?
I think some have.
The woman with her children who's
no, I don't think she knows anything about anything. No.
No, I mean, I'm just talking about the. I'm not casting aspersions. I'm just saying, because I am.
But that could be the message. That's what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
This Shanahan woman threatening to primary Republicans because she's a billionaire and she can.
Mm-hmm.
The billionaires lined up at the inauguration.
Right. Got it.
And run against Jeff Bezos if you don't want to run against Elon Musk.
Mm-hmm.
And run against what's his name? Soros.
Yeah.
If you don't like they are well aware of Soros.
Well, yes, they are.
So, if you don't want Soros affecting your elections, hey, there's this law that was passed that lets Soros donate millions of dollars. And you can convince Republicans, and it polls very badly among Republicans.
Sure.
It's just an inherent evil. And yet, I think we're getting to the point, as one of my colleagues at Cricks and Liars said, there are Democrats in Washington who think 2024 went great because they raised so much money.
So much money. Yeah.
You got to remember Kamala Harris raised $1 billion.
She did.
Isn't that awesome?
$1 billion. That's a lot of money. That's real money. Do you remember
that could feed a lot of kids?
Do you remember when you offered Pamela Atlas the opportunity to work together?
Yep.
And
on repealing the Patriot Act.
That's right.
She was freaking out that Barack Obama would know the library book she took out.
Right. And what was the response?
I went on her comment thread and said, let's work together because this is wrong. It's morally wrong that the government should have this much intrusion. And I had Pammy Atlas commenters reply to me with respect. They weren't calling me a C word or anything. They flat out said, I'm okay when Bush does it.
Now let's take that lesson learned and apply it to Donald Trump and billionaires on the right.
Yep.
It's okay when my guys do it. I don't care that my guys have billionaires pouring money into their pockets. I don't care that Donald Trump's corrupt. I don't care he's a criminal. I care when Democrats do it. That's why I hate Soros, because Soros is a Democrat billionaire. That's why I hate Soros. I don't hate billionaires. Billionaires are awesome. I'm going to be a billionaire
They're
someday.
Successful. I'm going to be a billionaire someday. Yeah. Yeah.
So applying good government liberal logic to people who think like that doesn't work because it's okay.
So maybe Cory Booker, instead of texting me 12 times a day to send him $3, could start bringing up Citizens United as the issue that Democrats need to have. That banner needs to be up there now so that we can overturn it 12 years from now. Or maybe 8.
I would be glad to receive emails from Cory Booker, but I just have a feeling they'd come in the package of move on petition, chip in $3 to end Citizens United.
Right.
Which is another useless money grab by people that aren't paying any attention to anything. They're just.
Well, I'm not doing that. I figure people are paying for our time when they donate $5 via Patreon.
Exactly. No, but I get 2 move on petitions a day.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And they're always for whatever the headline is, send me $3 and sign this petition, sucker. And they're always sandwiched between the Democrats.com send us $5.
Yeah, I know.
And it's all.
But that's what I'm saying. That is now the water that Washington swims in.
Exactly.
Rather than noting that the reason they have to be fundraising 24/7, 365 every cycle is Citizens United.
Yeah.
Because they're up against Ms. Shanahan and her primary threat.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the Republicans are quaking in their boots about that.
And all I'm saying is you're going to be really successful convincing Democrats that Citizens United is a terrible thing. Go over across the aisle and they're going to say, sure, Democratic billionaires are bad, but Republican billionaires are great.
I'm just saying, I think that term, I think this is the first time many of our listeners have heard about Citizens United in 2 years.
Yeah.
Because we're just letting it fade into the background and it's now it's the new normal. And it should never be the new normal that billionaires can buy our elections. I
think it's one of the 2 or 3 worst Supreme Court decisions in modern history.
Yeah.
That and presidential immunity. There's a bunch of corporate cases. Yeah. Yeah, and Roe. No, I mean, and they're all the same court. They're all the same people making all the same decisions.
Yeah. And it's a corrupt court. It is the corruption, stupid. It is the corruption. All right, let's do a news roundup, Driftglass.
Yeah, let's get off the whole thing and do the other thing.
The cornfield resistance persists.
We do.
The White House rescinded an order freezing federal grants and loans after facing legal challenges and widespread confusion, Driftglass.
Uh-huh.
The directive issued Monday by the Office of Management and Budget instructed federal agencies to temporarily pause all activities related to obligations or disbursement of all federal financial assistance, but was blocked by a federal judge on Tuesday. However, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, she's a special creature,
She's one of God's special creatures.
Insisted this is not a rescission of the federal funding freeze. It's simply a rescission of the OMB memo.
Right.
Why? She wrote, why? To end any confusion created by the court's injunction. The president's EOs on federal funding remain in full force and effect and will be rigorously implemented. Many commenters noted that Leavitt is engaged in contempt of court in her statement. Oopsie.
Yeah. Because she didn't mention that everyone's under double secret probation, Blue Gal.
Yeah, right.
And I just, it sometimes stops me in my tracks how dumb these people are. Here's more audio of Caroline Leavitt being an idiot. Now, you can't see it on the video, but she is wearing a big old cross around her neck to let everyone know that she and Jeebus are best friends.
This administration believes that birthright citizenship is unconstitutional, and that is why President Trump signed that executive order.
Remember Alina Habba, the Trump ambulance chaser who represented him in the E. Jane Carroll case, who just this month appeared on a show as a guest and told Andrew Tate, who is accused of rape, human trafficking, and other charges, that she is a big fan. Yeah, she decided to go on Fox News and defend Caroline Leavitt's incompetence and stupidity like this. Quote, she didn't need a thick binder, unlike our last secretary who was put there for DEI reasons, unquote. To clarify, Karine Jean-Pierre earned 2 degrees, has worked in politics for 21 years, including on 5 presidential campaigns and in 2 administrations, and speaks 3 languages. Anyone still not clear what DEI is code for?
Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth revoked retired General Mark Milley's security detail and clearance and ordered an Inspector General. Oh, we have Inspector Generals now. That's great. Investigation into his conduct as the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Trump previously accused Milley of treason for reassuring Chinese officials that Trump wasn't planning to attack them. And it was an act so egregious, in times gone by, the punishment would have been death, all caps. Milley's call was authorized, by the way, by then Defense Secretary Mark Esper. More recently, Milley has called Trump a fascist to the core and the most dangerous person in this country, unquote.
To this country.
To this country.
Yeah. There's a new Nepo baby in the White House. On Wednesday, an aide for Vice President J.D. Vance confirmed that he hired Tucker Carlson's 28-year-old son, Buckley Carlson, as his deputy press secretary.
Yeah.
DEI.
Yeah.
Not diversity, though.
No.
Not equity. Just inclusion of Tucker Carlson's kid.
Yeah. Tucker Carlson's kid. The thought of that just makes me shudder. The federal government's new top human resources attorney has said in the past consent is probably modern society's most pernicious fetish, and that slaves owe us reparations. This is according to a new report from the watchdog group Project on Government Oversight. Oh, joy. Now, there's only one really important item in local news, and I'm going to let Blue Gal carry the ball on this.
Well, thank you very much, Driftglass.
Uh-huh.
You know who's saying nice things to Blue Gal on Blue Sky?
Mm-hmm.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez reposted me last night, Wednesday night, and said thank you and talked about her knitting. I welcomed her to Blue Sky as a knitter because she's learning to knit. And she reposted me, and I have to tell you, I'm not yet off of the ceiling. I think Driftglass at some point will peel me off the ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
I am just delighted and fangirling all over the place. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, fellow knitter, you are welcome on my knitting podcast anytime.
I think you should be careful about letting her know your politics, because if she finds out you're a liberal,
if she finds out I'm a liberal, then what?
Then she'll that's it. Blocked.
Hey, each week.
You've earned every bit of it, baby. You've earned every bit of it.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm just so delighted that she's knitting, and she's doing it so she doesn't doom scroll, which is why a lot of us are knitting these days. Each week we post to our Facebook page and website an internet kitty sent in by you, the listeners. This week's internet kitty is Lemmy, named after the dearly departed Lemmy from Motorhead. He's an energetic junkyard and garage cat. His hobbies are climbing forklifts and hanging from one claw.
Yeah.
Needless to say, Lemmy will only eat freshly poured cat food, our fake sponsor. Whether you serve pet store perfection or dollar store dreck, your junkyard cat will sit outside the garage and demand that the food they eat is only freshly poured.
Freshly poured, oh my Lord, it's freshly poured.
And you can visit our Patreon page, patreon.com/proleftpod, or our website, proleftpod.com, to see Lemmy. And you can send your internet kitty dog or other pet to us. Send us a photo at our email address, proleftpodcast@gmail.com, where you can also write to both of us. Feel free to write us. We love hearing from you. Be aware that if you write to us at any of our addresses, we reserve the right to read your email or U.S. Postal Service. Go, postal unions, fire to joy, letter on the air unless you say otherwise.
Do not forget our gourmet coffee guidelines. If you can afford to buy an espresso-based beverage for yourself, buy one for us. This is not charity. This is our job. And if you can spare $5 a month, please. Hello. Just lost my mouth there for a second, Blue Gal. But we're going to let that stay. Because if you can spare, it's late and we're both very tired. If you can spare $5 a month, please spare $5 a month. See how I pronounce that real good? At patreon.com/proleftpod. Please share our show on social media, which has a lot of S's in it if you've never noticed. And if you love this podcast, please get someone else to listen to. And thank you so very much for doing that.
Hey, Driftglass, how are the internet kitties doing this week?
Well, Blue Gal, the internet kitties have an excellent excuse for missing Kash Patel's fiasco. We would have attended, but we were stuck in a box. Or were we stuck in the box? It's complicated.
Let's think about living.
Think about living.
Let's think about loving.
Think about loving.
Let's think about the hooping and the hopping and the popping and the lovey-dovey. Let's forget about the wine and the crying, the shooting and the dying, and the fellow with the switchblade knife. Let's think about living. Let's think about life.
The Professional Left podcast is recorded under a Creative Commons license. Copyright 2024-25, GGBG Productions.